Cyber Threat Brief for April 3, 2026. Akira ransomware reaches encryption in under an hour. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, adds TrueConf client vulnerability to KEV, known exploited vulnerabilities catalog with April 16 deadline. Mass credential harvesting hits 766 next. JS hosts via React 2 shell exploit. Cisco patches critical 9. 8 CVSS, the common vulnerability scoring system, authentication bypass in IMC and SSM products. Here's the full breakdown of today's top security stories. Daily Cyber Threat Brief, April 3, 2026. Next section, Critical Alerts. CVE 2026-3502 TrueConf client code download without integrity check. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, added this vulnerability to the known exploited vulnerabilities catalog based on evidence of active exploitation. The flaw allows download of code without integrity verification in TrueConf client software. EPSS, the exploit prediction scoring system, scoring shows 0, first percentile, indicating low observed exploitation probability despite KEV, known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, listing. Action: federal agencies must remediate by April 16, 2026 per BOD 22.1. All organizations should prioritize patching TrueConf client installations immediately. Source: CISA. CVE 2025-55182 React 2 shell mass credential theft campaign attackers exploited the React 2 shell vulnerability. CVSS, the common vulnerability scoring system, 10.0, to compromise 766 next. JS hosts across multiple cloud providers and geographic regions. Threat Cluster UAT 10608 deployed Nexus Listener Framework to harvest database credentials, SSH private keys, AWS secrets, shell history, Stripe API keys, and GitHub tokens. The campaign targets publicly exposed Next.js applications through automated scanning. Nexus Listener v3 provides attackers with password-protected web GUI to browse stolen credentials, search by host, and view statistics. EPSS score is 0, 651, 98th percentile, confirming widespread active exploitation. CISA KEV due date was December 12, 2025. Action: audit next. JS deployments for CVE 2025-55182 patch status. Rotate all credentials if compromise suspected. Enable secret scanning. Implement IMSV2 on AWS EC2 instances. Avoid SSH key reuse. Check for DNS queries to sfrclack.com, file artifacts.com, Apple, act, mind/tmp/ld. Pi WT exe. Sources: The Hacker News Talos. Axios supply chain attack deploys cross-platform RAT North Korean state actor, UNC 1069/Sapphire Sleet. Compromised NPM credentials of Axios maintainer, and published 2 backdoored releases on March 31, 2026. Malicious versions 1.8.1, tagged latest, and 1.7.10, tagged legacy, were live for 3 hours. Approximately 600,000 downloads occurred during that window. Each version introduced dependency plain crypto.js at 1.0.0, a purpose-built Trojan deploying Waveshaper. V2 RAT communicating with sfrclack.com, 142.11.206.73. First infection observed 89 seconds after publication. Axios has 100 million weekly downloads and exists in roughly 80% of cloud and code environments. The attack bypassed OIK trusted publishing because a legacy NPM access token coexisted with modern controls, and NPM prioritizes environment variable tokens over OIK. Action: check package lock. JSON and NPM audit logs for Axios at 1.8.1, Axios at 1.7.10, or plain crypto.js at 1.0.0. Hunt for DNS queries to sfrclack.com, files WT, exe/tmp/ld. Pi.com, Apple, act, mind. Rotate NPM tokens, remove legacy credentials, audit OIT configurations to ensure old tokens are disabled. Source: Sentinel-1. Next section, ransomware claims, last 48H. No ransomware victim claims data available for this reporting period. Next section, ransomware and extortion. Akira ransomware achieves encryption in under 1 hour. Akira ransomware group has reduced attack lifecycle from initial access to encryption to less than 4 hours, with some incidents completing in under 1 hour. The group has compromised hundreds of victims over the past year and collected at least $245 million in ransom payments through September 2025. Akira likely includes former Conti affiliates and uses zero-day exploits, initial access brokers, and VPNs lacking MFA, multi-factor authentication, for entry. The group employs intermittent encryption to encrypt large files faster in smaller blocks. Unlike most ransomware operators who spend 95% of development time on encryption malware, Akira invests heavily in functional decryptors, including autosave features for large files with custom Akira extensions to ensure recovery if encryption is interrupted. This increases victim payment rates. Akira exploits vulnerabilities in VM backup servers, Cisco VPNs, and Sonic wall appliances. FBI and CISA identified Akira as a top ransomware group targeting SMBs in manufacturing, education, IT, healthcare, financial, and agricultural sectors. Action: enforce MFA on all VPN connections. Patch VM backup servers, Cisco VPN products, and Sonic wall appliances immediately. Monitor for rapid lateral movement and file encryption activity. Review backup integrity and offline storage procedures. Source: Cyberscoop. An EDR killer disables 300+ security products. Cisco, Talos analyzed malicious MSIM32 DLL deployed in Killin ransomware attacks. The multi-stage infection chain targets and disables over 300 different EDR drivers from nearly every vendor. The loader uses SEH/VEH-based obfuscation to hide control flow and API invocation patterns, neutralizes user mode hooks, and suppresses event tracing for Windows ETWA. Once active, the EDR killer loads RWDRV, SIS, physical memory access, and HLPDRV, SIS, process termination. Before loading the second driver, it unregisters EDR monitoring callbacks to ensure process termination proceeds without interference. The loader is likely sideloaded by legitimate applications importing functions from MSIM32 DLL. Action: monitor for unexpected MSIM32 DLL loads via DLL, dynamic link library, sideloading, RWDRV, SIS and HLPDRV, SIS driver installations, and ETW suppression. Review EDR callback registration integrity. Investigate legitimate applications that could be exploited for sideloading. Source: Talos. AI-enabled BEC fraud reaches 54% click-through rate. AI-enhanced business email compromise campaigns achieve 54% click-through rates compared to 12% for traditional phishing, a 450% effectiveness increase. AI enables localization and role-specific targeting at scale, reducing friction in lure creation. Microsoft tracks Tycoon 2 FA operation, Storm 1747, as industrial-scale cybercrime subscription platform generating tens of millions of phishing emails monthly. Linked to nearly 100,000 compromised organizations since 2023, accounting for 62% of all phishing attempts Microsoft blocked at peak. Tycoon 2 FA specializes in adversary-in-the-middle attacks, defeating MFA by intercepting credentials and session tokens in real time. The operation uses modular cybercrime structure, separate services for phishing templates, infrastructure, email distribution, and access monetization. Action: verify unexpected payment or transfer requests via separate communication channels, phone call to known number, not email-provided contact. Enforce strict procurement rules preventing urgent last-minute payments. Train staff on AI-generated BEC tactics targeting small organizations, not just large enterprises. Sources: Talos, Microsoft. Insider extortion attempt locks 254 servers. Former core infrastructure engineer Daniel Ryan pleaded guilty to locking Windows admins out of 254 servers in extortion plot against New Jersey Industrial Company. Between November 9, 2023, Ryan remotely accessed the network using administrator account, scheduling tasks to delete domain admin accounts and change passwords for 13 domain admin accounts and 301 domain user accounts to the FR0 Zen crew. Tasks also changed passwords for local admin accounts, affecting 3,284 workstations and 254 servers. On November 25, Ryan emailed ransom demand titled "Your network has been penetrated," claiming all IT admins were locked out and backups deleted, demanding 20 Bitcoin, $750,000 at the time. Forensic analysis showed web searches for clearing Windows logs, changing domain passwords, and deleting domain accounts. Action: review privileged access controls and monitoring for former employees. Implement password change alerting for domain admin and local admin accounts. Monitor for suspicious scheduled task creation. Log and alert on web searches from admin workstations for credential manipulation commands. Source: Bleeping Computer. Next section: IOCs and Detection. Nexus Listener Framework, CVE 2025-55182 campaign, domain sfrclack.com, IP 142.11.206.73, files, COM Apple, ACT, Mind Mac OS/TMP/LD, Pi Linux WT, EXE Windows renamed PowerShell binary in %program data %, confidence, high, Cisco Talos attribution, Axios supply chain attack Waveshaper, V2 RAT, NPM packages, Axios at 1.8.1, Axios at 1.7.10, plain crypto.js at 1.0.0, domain sfrclack.com, IP 142.11.206.73, files WT, EXE/TMP/LD, Pi COM Apple, ACT, Mind, confidence, high, Google Threat Intelligence/Microsoft attribution to UNC 1069/Sapphire Sleet. Killin Ransomware EDR Killer, file, msimg32, DLL malicious side-loaded, drivers, RWDRV, SIS physical memory access HLPDRV, SIS process termination, targets, 300 plus EDR drivers across all major vendors, confidence, high Cisco Talos analysis. Next section, business and infrastructure threats. vSphere Brickstorm malware targets virtualization layer. Google Threat Intelligence Group analyzed Brickstorm malware targeting VMware vSphere ecosystem, specifically vCenter Server Appliance, VCSA, and ESXi hypervisors. Attackers establish persistence at the virtualization layer beneath guest OS where traditional EDR is ineffective. Intrusions exploit weak security architecture, identity design, lack of host-based configuration enforcement, and limited visibility within virtualization layer. vCenter compromise grants administrative control over every managed ESXi host and VM. Attackers gain centralized command, power off, delete, reconfigure any VM, reset root credentials on ESXi hosts, and total data access to underlying storage, VMDK, bypassing OS permissions. Photon OS shell access via SSH has no remote logging of shell commands. Many organizations host Active Directory domain controllers as VMs in same vSphere cluster managed by a de-integrated vCenter, creating circular dependency during encryption or wipe scenarios. Mandiant released vCenter hardening script to enforce security configurations at Photon Linux layer. Action: implement Tier 0 security controls on vCenter appliances. Deploy vCenter hardening script from Mandiant. Enable remote logging for Photon OS shell commands. Separate vCenter authentication from hosted VMs. Review vCenter and ESXi access controls. Implement host-based configuration enforcement. Source: Google Threat Intelligence. Cisco source code theft via malicious GitHub action. Hackers claim to have stolen Cisco source code using malicious GitHub action to steal credentials from development environment. Attackers obtain source code from internal systems and credentials for AWS servers. Extortion attempt in progress. Action: audit GitHub Actions workflows for malicious steps. Review GitHub Actions permissions and secrets access. Rotate AWS credentials if Cisco products are in use. Monitor for unauthorized GitHub action modifications in CI/CD pipelines. Source: Risky Biz. Cookie-controlled PHP web shells in Linux hosting. Microsoft reports threat actors increasingly use HTTP cookies as control channel for PHP-based web shells on Linux servers. Instead of exposing command execution through URL parameters or request bodies, web shells rely on cookie values to gate execution, pass instructions, and activate malicious functionality. This reduces visibility by allowing malicious code to remain dormant during normal application behavior, executing only when specific cookie conditions are met. Observed across web requests, scheduled tasks, and trusted background workers. Cookies blend into normal web traffic and receive less scrutiny than request paths or payloads. PHP $cookie superglobal allows immediate access to attacker-supplied input without additional parsing. Implementations include loaders with execution gating and layered obfuscation, base64 decoding, runtime function reconstruction, character-by-character assembly, and direct cookie-driven payload stagers. Action: review web server logs for suspicious cookie patterns. Implement cookie inspection in WAF rules. Monitor PHP file changes and unexpected file includes. Audit scheduled tasks and background workers for cookie-based execution triggers. Source: Microsoft. Merkur hit by light LLM supply chain attack. AI recruiting firm Merkur investigating security incident. Lapsus claimed theft of 4 terabytes of Merkur data via light LLM supply chain attack. Action: if using light LLM library, audit for unauthorized changes. Review supply chain dependencies for AI/ML libraries. Monitor for data exfiltration from AI platforms. Source: Security Week. Hasbro attack remediation may take weeks. Hasbro 8K filing notes unauthorized access to systems. Company activated business continuity plans and took some systems offline. Remediation expected to take weeks. Action. Monitor for Hasbro vendor/partner compromise activity. Review third-party supply chain connections. Source, dark reading. Next section, Windows/AD security. Microsoft force upgrades Windows 11 24H2 to 25H2. Microsoft began force upgrading unmanaged Windows 11 24H2 home and pro devices to Windows 11 25H2. Machine learning-based rollout expanded to all devices not managed by IT departments. Windows 11 24H2 reaches end of support October 13, 2026. Devices will automatically receive update when ready with option to postpone or pause. Updates can be paused from Settings Windows Update. Since March 2026 Patch Tuesday, Microsoft issued several emergency updates including fix for sign-in issue with Microsoft accounts affecting Teams and OneDrive, and out-of-band updates for Bluetooth device visibility and RAW security vulnerabilities. Action. Test Windows 11 25H2 in lab environment before widespread deployment. Review pause update policies for managed devices. Plan upgrade timeline before October 2026 end of support deadline. Source, Bleeping Computer. Identity-based attacks dominate threat landscape. Cisco, Talos 2025 Year in Review shows identity-based attack techniques central to lateral movement, privilege escalation, and persistence. Fraudulent device registration increased 178% year-over-year. Attackers target administrator-managed registration flows at 3 times the rate of user-driven ones through phishing, voice phishing. Internal phishing incidents represent more than 1/3 of observed phishing, with attackers sending messages from already compromised accounts. Mailbox rules hide replies and suppress visibility. Attackers explore shared drives and collaboration platforms for sensitive information to expand access. 40% of top 100 exploited vulnerabilities effective because organizations run end-of-life devices. React 2 shell weaponized within weeks of December disclosure, becoming most targeted vulnerability. 12-year-old vulnerability still in top 10 exploited list. Action. Implement continuous identity monitoring and risk-based access controls. Detect abnormal behavior in authentication patterns. Review device registration workflows for administrator-level approvals. Monitor for internal phishing from compromised accounts and suspicious mailbox rules. Prioritize end-of-life device replacement. Sources, Talos Sentinel-1. Azure vulnerabilities allow privilege escalation and information disclosure. Microsoft published advisories for CVE 2026-32213. Azure AI Foundry elevation of privilege. Azure custom locations RPSSRF leading to privilege escalation, and Azure SRE agent information disclosure. Details limited, and 2 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action. Monitor Microsoft Update Guide for patches. Review Azure AI Foundry, custom locations, and SRE agent deployments for unauthorized access attempts. Sources, MSRC, and 2 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Next section, General Security News. U.S. bans all foreign-made consumer routers. Executive branch determination bans foreign-produced consumer routers, citing supply chain vulnerability that could disrupt U.S. economy, critical infrastructure, and national defense. Routers pose severe cybersecurity risk that could be leveraged to immediately disrupt critical infrastructure and harm U.S. persons. Ban applies to new routers only. Existing devices do not require replacement. Action. Plan router procurement strategy using U.S. manufactured products. Review current router inventory for lifecycle planning. Source, Schneier on security. Russia tightening ISB requirements to force small providers off market. Russian government proposing new rules requiring higher license fees, larger minimum operational capital, and mandatory deployment of FSB, SORM traffic interception equipment. Ministry of Digital Development will gain power to revoke licenses without court order for noncompliance. Providers losing license banned from obtaining new one for decade. Move targets smaller ISBs that delayed or refused SORM equipment deployment, choosing to pay fines but advertise uncensored services. Russia implementing China-style firewall with multiple disconnection tests, censorship reaching millions of domains, full VPN crackdown, and FSB power to cut internet access at will. 3 major cities had mobile internet replaced with whitelist-based system allowing only approved websites. Source, Risky Biz. Newspaper archive service disrupted by cyberattack on Utah company newspaper archive disrupted access to digital newspaper archives across U.S. libraries. Incident occurred late February, still ongoing. Service initially hoped to restore by end of March, timeline extended. Source, Risky Biz. Python and PostgreSQL growth reflects AI-driven development. ChainGuard report, analyzing 2,200 container image projects, shows Python remains most popular image, 72.1% of customers. PostgreSQL usage grew 73% quarter-over-quarter, reflecting AI stack adoption. AI accelerating software development and vulnerability discovery, 300% more fixes applied, 145% increase in vulnerabilities discovered. 96% of vulnerabilities found and remediate occurred outside top 20 most popular projects. Action: audit Python and PostgreSQL container images for vulnerabilities. Focus security attention on long-tail projects outside top 20 most popular. Implement secret scanning and vulnerability monitoring for AI development stacks. Source: The Hacker News. Next section, patch priority. Cisco IMC/SSM, CVE 2026-20093 and CVE 2026-20160, CVSS 9.8 allow unauthenticated remote authentication bypass and command execution. Patch immediately across UCS servers, INCs, Catalyst Edge devices, and SSM on-prem. Through Conf Client, CVE 2026-3502 on CISAKEV, federal deadline April 16. Patch code download integrity check vulnerability. Next, JS/React, CVE 2025-55182, CVSS 10.0 under active mass exploitation for credential theft. Patch and rotate credentials immediately. Vite development servers, CVE 2025-30208, EPSS 0.890 allows file system access bypass. Ensure Vite only accessible via localhost, not exposed to network. Siemens SICM 8. CVE 2026-27663 and CVE 2026-27664 cause denial of service. Update to v26, 10 or later. Next section, vulnerability disclosures. CVE 2026-20093 and CVE 2026-20160 Cisco, critical authentication bypass, and remote code execution Cisco, patched critical authentication bypass in integrated management controller. CVE 2026-20093, CVSS 9.8, allowing unauthenticated remote attackers to bypass authentication and gain elevated privileges. Flaw stems from incorrect password change request handling. Attacker sends crafted HTTP request to alter passwords of any user including admin, gaining system access. Effects 5000 series ENCs, fixed 4.15.5, Catalyst 8000, 300 Edge UCPE, fixed 4.18.3, UCSC series M5/M6 rack servers standalone mode, fixed 4.3.2, 260,007, 4.3.6, 260,017, 6.0.1, 250,174, UCSE series M3, fixed 3.2.17, UCSE series M6, fixed 4.15.3. CVE 2026-20160, CVSS 9.8, in Smart Software Manager on-prem, allows unauthenticated remote code execution via exposed internal service API. Fixed in SSM on-prem 9200 and 2601. No known exploitation, but recent Cisco vulnerabilities weaponized rapidly. Action: update immediately to fix versions. UCSC series 4.3.2 260,007, 4.3.6 260,017, 6.0.1 250,174. ENCs 4.15.5. Catalyst 8300, 4.18.3. UCSE series M3, 3.2.17. UCSE series M6, 4.15.3. SSM on-prem, 9200 and 2601, no workarounds available. Sources: The Hacker News Security Week. CVE 2025-30208 Vite file system, access bypass Vite development server vulnerability, allows arbitrary file retrieval via /@fs/prefix combined with raw suffix to bypass access restrictions. Attackers attempt to retrieve configuration files to extract secrets. Vite typically listens on port 5173. EPSS score 0.890, 100th percentile, indicates widespread exploitation attempts. Attacks target standard web server ports, not just default Vite port. Honeypots collected URLs like /@fs/ etc/ environment, raw /@fs/ etc/ environment, raw /@fs/ home /app/ OS/ credentials, raw. Action: ensure Vite development servers only accessible via localhost, not exposed to network. Review web server logs for /@fs/ and raw patterns. Rotate secrets if Vite exposure suspected. Source, Sanzisk. CVE 2025-10492 Hitachi Energy, Ellipse Jasper Report RCE Java Deserialization Vulnerability in Jaspersoft Library, used for custom reports in Ellipse product versions 9.0.50 and prior. Improper handling of externally supplied data allows remote code execution. EPSS 0.4, 59th percentile. Action: restrict loading of external custom reports, allow only trusted Jasper reports generated by system administrator. Update to patched version when available. Source, CISICS Industrial Control Systems. CVE 2026-27663 and CVE 2026-27664, Siemens SICM 8 Denial of Service, multiple SICM 8 products affected by DOS vulnerabilities. CVE 2026-27663, CPCI 85, ARTUM 85, resource exhaustion from high volume of requests in remote operation mode. CVE 2026-27664, CPCI 85 SICOR, out-of-bounds write via specially crafted XML inputs causing service crash, affects critical manufacturing sector worldwide. Action: update to v26, 10 or later. CPCI 85 v26, 10 in CP 8031/CP 8050 package and SICM EGS package. ARTUM 85 v26, 10 in CP 8010/CP 8012 package and SICM S 8000 package. SICOR v26, 10, 0 in same packages. Source, CISIX. CVE 2025-7741, Yakagawa Centum, VP hard-coded password for Prague user account in Centum authentication mode. Default Prague permission is S1, equivalent to off-user, limiting risk for properly permission-controlled systems. If Prague permissions changed, risk of critical operations or configuration changes increases. Exploitation requires attacker access to his screen controls. Affects Centum VP R5, 10 R5, 4, 20 R6, 10 R6, 12, 0 R7, 10, EPSS 0.0, 4th percentile. Action R5, 10 R5, 4, 20 and R6, 10 R6, 12, 0. Change to Windows authentication mode requires engineering work. Contact Yakagawa, R7, 10, apply patch R7, 1, 10, source, CISIX. CVE 2026-34073 Cryptography Library DNS Name Constraint Enforcement Incomplete DNS Name Constraint Enforcement on Peer Names in Cryptography Library. Minimal details available. EPSS 0.0, 6th percentile. Action: monitor for patches to Cryptography Library. Update when available. Source, MSRC. Chromium vulnerabilities in Microsoft Edge. Multiple Chromium vulnerabilities addressed in Microsoft Edge. CVE 2026-5289, use after free in navigation, EPSS 0.1/20th percentile, inappropriate implementation in Angle, EPSS 0.0/2nd percentile, object corruption in V8, EPSS 0.1/23rd percentile, integer overflow in Angle, EPSS 0.1/20th percentile, insufficient policy enforcement in WebUSB, EPSS 0.0/13th percentile, and 4 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: update Microsoft Edge to latest version to receive Chromium security patches. Sources, MSRC, and 4 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Next section, Trends and Context. Today's stories highlight ransomware operational maturity, supply chain vulnerability at scale, and identity as the primary attack surface. Akira's sub-hour encryption timeline and investment in reliable decryptors show ransomware as a business optimization. The Axios NPM compromise demonstrates state actors can weaponize trust relationships in package ecosystems, affecting hundreds of thousands of installations within hours. Nexus Listener Framework industrializes credential harvesting with attacker-friendly GUI. AI-enabled BEC campaigns, achieving 54% click-through rates, show how automation scales social engineering to target small organizations previously considered unprofitable. Identity-based attacks dominate because valid credentials bypass most security controls, with fraudulent device registration up 178% and internal phishing from compromised accounts representing over 1/3 of incidents. That concludes today's Cyber Threat Brief. From Carolina Clear Tech, stay patched, stay vigilant.